prior to the income tax, right? There were other mechanisms or tools, the government, and frankly, let's just call the government what they are. They're people, they're humans. When humans saw an ability to exploit, to take advantage, to benefit themselves or theirs in some way, to maintain power and exploit that power in some way that allowed them to get some benefit, right? Prior to income taxes, whatever it might be. Maybe it was slavery, maybe it was the labor laws allowed for it. And all these things that are evolving over time, it's at the root, it's all the same. It's still that human nature towards greed. It's not that humans are inherently evil or bad. It's just that we are, at least some would argue, quite literally on this earth to like expand as a species and to thrive and growth. And that's what's inherent in us. And that's kind of what it is. That's what's at the root of this, whether it be the income tax or some other legislation or policy. It's all the same thing, which again gets you back to that point of like, well, then what gives me any optimism that we can figure this thing out? Because it's always just a new flavor of how they're doing this, right? So that's one aspect. Let me stop on that aspect of it. I know we've touched on it a little bit, but like, as you're saying the things you're saying, I hear the words, and I have no reason to believe you don't. I'm just trying to, this is what I love the show. I want to understand it. How do you get yourself mentally to a place where you can actually believe it and say, I know there's a solution here that's going to fix seemingly this problem of human nature that's existed for eternity?
Well, I think as I alluded to a little bit earlier, so there was an interesting conversation, I listened to it, and it's with oh God, I apologize, I'm just completely blanking. I'm a little bit tired. My baby woke up at 5 in the morning today.
You got an excuse.
It's essentially what the argument that this person was I was listening to earlier was saying that, you know, there's always going to be the weight, as you said, the weight of people trying to get ahead, take advantage. And how do you solve that? Again, to your question, how do you solve libertarianism? And my concept that I thought of is basically this. When you have everyone working at all times under the system that I'm talking about, where everybody's got an equal footing to get ahead, you have the restrictions are removed. Essentially, imagine a giant, you know, let's say a basalt pillar, right? Or a giant concrete pillar. Everybody's trying to get that pillar. That's the money. That's the intrigue. That's the winning. That's money. That's power. But when you have everybody trying to get at it and nobody's got a very specific lever of power that they can apply through government, through crony capitalism, through lobbying, through, you know, different laws and regulations. And the biggest actors always have the more regulations that benefit them. I mean, look at social media companies, look at banking companies, any large industry. When you have everybody pulling on their separate chains at all the same time on this massive concrete pillar trying to get ahead, you have the most chance of everybody balancing out because it can't move. When you have everybody pulling from all sides at all points, you have the best chance of that pillar staying upright. Now, I'm hoping this is the point I'm trying to make is coming through here.
It is. Well, let me ask on it because it is coming through clear. It's almost to say like it's kind of like a perfect free market in some ways, right? If it's working the way it's intended, you don't need regulation. It regulates itself. It functions the way it's supposed to.
Because anytime somebody gets too big of an advantage, there's somebody that's going to come in and take them out with a better idea, a better offer, a better price.
Exactly right. That's a beautiful. That's the question in it to me is can libertarianism, or at least what you're expressing here, can it overcome human nature? Because even if you can let's say we were able to snap our fingers and get that level playing field where nobody has one thing they're working towards, everybody's working towards it. Is human nature just going to bring us back to it? Maybe it won't be lobbyists, maybe it won't be government, maybe we'll call it something else. But we will formulate groups in ways in which some of us can win and some of us can lose. And back to it, that's just inherent in who we are. So the solution that you're suggesting to get to that better place, it's almost like inherently contradictory to what humans are. And it's impossible for us to ever embrace that. Even if we were put in that situation exactly as you want it, we would find our ways back to this, which is sad, and cynical. I'm not saying it's true, but we have to consider it, right?
No, I would agree with you. I completely agree with you. As I say, again, look what happened with our very own government. The growth of this. There's always going to be people that are looking to get an advantage, and sadly, I've come to accept this. Is the resting state of humanity is authoritarianism. It is what makes the most people comfortable. People, a large portion of the population simply is uncomfortable having freedom. I mean, this is a sad truth. They prefer to have somebody and they're a strong man. There's a reason certain people like, let's say like a Donald Trump or a Putin have a large amount of support. And I'm not saying I hate Donald Trump. I don't know how, I don't know where your audience breaks down, politically, but there's always going to be that portion that wants to be ruled because it makes them feel safe. And there's always going to be that portion that wants to rule. So inevitably you are going to have power structures built up, but that's where the thing is, the fight has to be fought. And I'm not saying that, that you're not wrong. I mean, it will eventually gravitate that way, but that's where there has to be a cultural movement that I think has been lost, a cultural belief in freedom being the driver that leads the way forward, and that when you see things pop up that are authoritarian, it has to be fought against. There should be a gut instinct in us, which I think we've lost as a country, that this is BS. This can't be permitted. These people are getting too powerful, too large. They have to be taken down one way or the other. We have to stand up and we have to say enough is enough. And that's something where I'm trying to sell that, not only in pointing out what people are losing, but as I mentioned, in trying to convince them that that freedom is the way forward, because you have to have a religious belief in it, essentially. It has to be a belief that transcends setbacks, that transcends people saying, well, you know what, here's why it won't work, X, Y, and Z. They have to believe that, okay, I don't really give a shit. Sorry, I'm sure if I give you a cursing pod.
Yeah, that's
okay.
Good.
Yeah, not sure. I don't give a shit if the one thing that we tried failed, because I believe that the next thing we try will succeed. And that's the key core of moving this forward, is that belief in freedom as a successful philosophy, and that try and try again, it will eventually succeed and we will be free. And this beautiful future awaits us.
Yeah, I mean, it is a beautiful future if it works that way. So I totally get the appeal of it. I think where it gets interesting for me is that there's this sense of, like you said it, right? It's almost religious, it's spiritual. There's almost a dogmatism to it that you have to have for exactly the reasons you're saying. Because I think of it, I'm not particularly spiritual or religious in any given faith, but I am a strong believer, which is parallels very strongly to a religious belief, which is like life is somewhat of a struggle. And I hear that a little bit in what you're saying at a micro level and at a macro level. There's this ongoing struggle where human nature to some extent is trying to pull us towards, power dynamics and exploiting people. And the struggle is for us to say, it would be easy to just give in to that, allow the strong man to win, but we're going to fight that. We know freedom is better. And you have to have that almost irrational belief in it, which is true. The trouble in that is that allows for a situation where when you're being dogmatic, when you have to have an irrational faith, you could be missing something, right? And there's a chance what you're willing to do to achieve that better state maybe causes more harm, right? And I'm not saying that's the case, but somebody could look at it and say the approach being taken by either side, right? A libertarian, a conservative, a progressive, it's somewhat of a battle stance. It's somewhat of a stance of, we are in that struggle, we are fighting that battle. And does that just keep us in it though, right? At some point, does somebody have to say, logically, it makes sense for me to fight this because I feel like there's a better way. But the thing that's stopping me from getting there is this sensation of fighting, that we're in a battle. Like the counterintuitive thing maybe we have to do is to not be in a battle and somehow let it play out. Those words perhaps sound nice, perhaps they're idealistic, I don't know. But like, how do you check that for yourself? How do you make sure you're not falling victim to the same things where it's not actually what's best for us? It's just, there's some other dogmatic belief behind it.